This conference will now be recorded.
Hello and welcome to the University of Bedfordshire webinar, Graduating in a Pandemic. Now, normally I would be running these presentations at universities in a lecture hall face-to-face. So as this can't be done right now, the lovely team at the University of Bedfordshire, Priya and James, have invited me to this webinar to share our experiences so far of what it's like for graduates entering the job market during a pandemic. So this is all new for everyone, but there's some good news I'd like to share with you. It'll probably be about 20 to 30 minutes. There will be the opportunity to ask questions at the end, so use the chat box, and Priya and James will be checking the questions, and then we can have that session at the end. And it's also being recorded. So if you'd like to go back through the information I'm sharing or share it with your friends who can't make it today, then by all means do that. I'll be uploading it to the GRB YouTube channel later on today. Okay, for those who don't know, my name's Dan Hawes and I'm the co-founder of GRB. So GRB stands for Graduate Recruitment Bureau. And we are the go-to platform for high caliber university students, graduates and recruiters. We were established back in 1997, myself and a fellow business graduate, Chris, and we've now got 40 staff, over 1,800 clients using us, all different sectors, all over the UK, companies you will have heard of, big names like Post Office, IBM, Unilever, Ocado, to name but a few, but also several fast-growing SMEs, small to medium enterprises. So these are companies that maybe aren't in the Premier League just yet. Their brand name isn't so strong, but they really struggle to find brilliant graduates. So they come to us. So we're working with a broad range of different companies, different sectors, and that's what we've been doing since 1997. So we've seen downturns before, 9/11, the dot-com bubble, and the recession in 2009. But this is very, very different. We've never been through a pandemic before, but we have been through a recession before, which is what we're in. But during that time, we've actually successfully placed well over 8,000 graduates with full-time graduate level jobs. So we're providing this service to recruiters and graduates, and we're moving forward during 2020, continuing to find these exciting opportunities for graduates. So let's have a look at the headlines. Some of the things that you may not have seen. I mean, there's a lot of bad news out there, but it depends where you look. These are some of the headlines I've seen in the last couple of months. So there's something from the FT here about what are the job prospects for the class of 2020. And they were looking at recruiters that are recruiting through this, or those that are putting things on hold or freezing their recruitment. So that's a very interesting article you may wish to have a look at in the FT. Also, the BBC reported that universities will more than likely be running lots of lectures remotely. Certainly Cambridge for a very long time, but lots of universities are either delivering this as a mixture of in-person lectures with some remote seminars as well. So kind of a hybrid model. So the whole university experience has been flipped upside down as well. So that's very, very different. We've never seen that before. In The Guardian, there was an article about employers slashing graduate jobs, but students mustn't lose hope. So again, that's an encouraging article about some of the companies that are recruiting through this and have actually accelerated their growth. And finally, something here about youth concerns during COVID. So unsurprisingly, top of the list for people aged 15 to 29 is employment. So, you know, it's really hard at the moment. It's very unfair that for graduates about to enter the job market, it's become increasingly hard to make that first step. But we're here to help graduates take that first step into the job market and start their career that they deserve. Now, just to expand on the situation we're in. First of all, a pandemic. So this is a global situation we're all in. It's killed over 927,000 people. So this has put the brakes on social mobility and economic growth. We all know that. But it's had such a huge impact, like nothing we've ever seen before. In the UK, since lockdown on March the 23rd, over 750,000 jobs have gone. Okay, so these are people being made redundant mostly. And when the furlough scheme ends at the end of this month, we may see that increase to potentially 1 million jobs having been lost. You know, a massive impact on the economy, to people's lives, people's careers. So we'll wait and see what will happen in the next few weeks. Now, graduates about to enter the jobs market, they've got quite a lot of competition, okay? So there's about 500,000 graduates about to enter the jobs market right now. And, you know, the pressure's on. You've got to pay your student debt after 3 years of study, and you want to get your career off to the best possible start. So the market, you know, is looking quite tough. Now, when are we going to get out of this is the big question. The last recession took about 18 months for us to get back to normal. The predictions for this recession looks anything from 18 months to maybe 36 months. So still too early to tell. We're certainly not having a V-shaped bounce back. People are talking about a K-shaped. So certain sectors going up and other sectors going down. So it pays to pay attention to what the Bank of England are saying and other trusted sources for their projections. But the last recession was 18 months, so we think it's going to be at least that before anything returns to normal in the economy. Now, graduate recruiters are not stopping recruiting entirely. What we found is they've either deferred their start dates. So instead of taking everyone on in September, let's say, for big graduate schemes, they may actually delay it till October or early in the next year, okay? So they're committed to those job offers, they're just deferring the start date. So that's good news. Other recruiters are putting things on hold, okay? So they've got plans to recruit graduates, but they're just kind of waiting and seeing what happens. Now, with several companies doing that, the backlog is just going to increase and increase. So who knows, maybe in the next 6 months, they get the green light and they go for it. So, you know, that's the way the market looks, particularly for larger firms right now. For those small to medium enterprises, a lot of them are struggling financially, more if they're in certain sectors on the front line, which I'll come to in a minute. But others that maybe have just started up, you know, they're really struggling. So training graduates isn't really a priority for these kind of companies. They're trying to survive and make sure they've got a long enough cash runway to come out of this at the other end. So, you know, there's kind of two different stories there, depending on the size of the company, and obviously their financial health and the strength of their management team will really see whether they go the distance. Now, the graduate labour market has suffered significant damage. So certain sectors, particularly the arts, which actually may be one of the worst affected in the whole of the UK. I mean, with limits on social mobility, distancing, it really is going to be very hard to start a job in that particular sector right now. Equally, retail, you know, high street shops are making redundancies. The hospitality industry, they're not sure how they're going to get through this. Travel, tourism, accommodation, all these areas will probably take a long-term hit and will be one of the few that show any signs in the short term. Now, typically in a recession, graduates tend to become very risk averse. So they'll actually avoid working for certain sectors that they feel are risky, or working for startups or smaller firms that are just trying to get going. They'd rather work for an organisation that is considered safer. So something like the public sector or teaching, for instance. We're seeing huge numbers of graduates apply for teaching roles because it's considered far more safe and offers more financial security. You know, graduates right now thinking, I need a job that's going to give me the financial security, the job security. So if this happens again, a recession that is, and they have more savings than they had this time around. So graduates' choices do change during recessions as well. And that's important to note because the competition will be greater for certain sectors, like in the public sector. So it may be cleverer to look at other sectors, and we'll come into those in a little bit more detail shortly. Now, also, some degrees that graduates will have started 3-4 years ago with good intentions to start a career at the end of it, now find themselves that they're maybe not so prepared in this new economy. So, you know, that's something that can't be undone. But that's something that we've advised graduates before, historically, to look at their transferable skills. So I think we shouldn't read into that too much. There's still plenty of career options out there, but it really depends on which ones that you go for and how you present your skills to successfully find jobs in those sectors. And the final point here is, I mean, there will be some graduates who applied for jobs earlier this year, and they've actually secured job offers. So they're okay, and they've landed a job. But for most graduates, they tend to focus first and foremost on getting their degree over the line. Then they'll worry about getting a job. Now that's really had a big impact because it's forced a lot of graduates into this situation right now. And some graduates will panic, take the first job that they're offered, and it could end up being a dead-end job. Okay, so we've seen that happen before, and we totally understand why graduates would do that. But we'll come on to reasons why you know, you should keep your career goals alive and not lose sight of those, not just take any old job just to pay the bills. So that's the situation we're in, I'm afraid. You know, it's not good news when you look at these aspects, but we can turn this around because we have noticed some good news, which I want to share with you, that's going to give you the reassurance and the encouragement to enter the job market. And we're seeing this every single day with graduates who register with us. We're matching them up with jobs right now. So things are still moving forward. So these are some of the other headlines we've picked up on, and these are in the last 4 weeks. Okay, so first of all, again, in the FT, hiring demand brings cheer for MBA graduates. Now, no, not everyone does an MBA postgraduate qualification, but that shows that skills that graduates can bring is going to be in demand. Okay, ultimately, graduates are cheaper hires than a more experienced person. Okay, so if they're making people redundant, they may look to replace those people with graduates. So we're noticing, certainly for MBA graduates, according to this article, that huge numbers of financial services, investment banking organizations are really fighting over MBA graduates right now. So that's some good news. Another piece of good news is a sector that's booming in construction. So again, this is one of many sectors we're seeing finding that this pandemic is actually accelerating their growth. Okay, so there's a mini housing boom in the UK. So there's opportunities in construction, and don't just think that that's for construction graduates. Construction firms will need accountants, marketing people, operations, all the different facets of a company. So don't overlook a sector because you think you need a degree in that sector. There are other opportunities. So that's another piece of good news. Here's one from IKEA. So retail. I mentioned before that retail in some areas have been really hit hard, where we're seeing here IKEA are actually making a record year for their store launches. So that's good. People are spending on interiors in their houses. People are starting to move house, so they need furniture and things like that. So if IKEA are doing well, other companies that supply IKEA will be doing well. Other companies that compete with IKEA do very well. So there's a whole structure of companies in that sector that are all going to be feeding off IKEA's success as they move forward. So you need to think kind of laterally when it comes to reading these news headlines and dig a bit deeper. And finally, this is a really good, very encouraging piece of research that showed the 10 fastest growing industries in the UK. Now, this came out last week, okay, with IBIS World. So check this out. The top one, with 179.4% year-on-year growth, which is massive, is investment companies. So, financial services, investment banking, they're still finding that people and organizations wish to invest. There are opportunities to be had. So investment companies are certainly a big area which we encourage you to have a look at. Life insurance, another one there. So people concerned about their health right now. Maybe they're thinking more about their life insurance. So there's opportunities there. Growth of 98.5% year on year. Technical sectors like CRM system providers. So these are customer relationship management. So usually marketing firms provide these systems that help organizations profile their customers, target their customers, and improve their marketing. So that's a technical consultancy area that could be well worth looking into for graduate opportunities. Language learning software developers, healthcare, construction, so they're building more structures for companies in the healthcare industry. Online food ordering and delivery, we know that's booming. Any in-home service is starting to see an uptick. Other technology and lending platforms, online book retailers. So one of our biggest clients this year was Amazon. We all, they can't hire everybody, but they were hiring loads of people, graduates right the way through to more senior roles. So have a look at that sector. Who else competes against Amazon, or who services Amazon? So think of logistics firms that have to deliver all their goods. And finally, air transport equipment rental and leasing has increased by 21%. So, here's 10 examples there of some of the sectors you might not even be aware of that could set you off by doing some research and start to uncover some jobs that you may not realize exist. So I think there's some really positive headlines there, and that's in the last 4 weeks. So please explore a little bit more. I've also had a look at some of the surveys and research that we receive. We're members of several professional bodies, so we get lots of useful insights into the way the market's going. And here's a rundown of some of the facts and figures I'd like to share with you. So the level of vacancies is running at just over 50% of normal rates. Okay, so not great, but it is climbing slowly. So, does that mean we've hit the bottom in certain sectors and things are starting to pick up? You have to look more into the detail of that report. But the fact that it is climbing is extremely positive. We wouldn't be able to report on this 6 months ago when we started to hit, a downward trajectory. But according to this report, things seem to be improving gradually. Now, this report also identified certain sectors that they found were less affected, okay? So health, we're all aware that companies are working around the clock to find a vaccine, but, people are getting ill from other things as well. So that continues to be a source of employment. So health and anything related to that sector seems to be less affected, as is social care, IT and finance. I mean, IT, traditionally, since we started the business 23 years ago, IT as a sector has consistently taken the majority of our graduates. And there's so many different companies working in this sector. You know, you think of IT, you think of the big firms, right? IBM, Apple, Google, all the names we're very familiar with. Well, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There are literally thousands of companies doing very well, getting funding, starting up, merging with other firms. You know, so there's lots of opportunities in the IT sector, and that consistently has done very well for graduates. Now, many employers, if they were postponing their recruitment, were at least discussing recruiting in Q3, Q4, if conditions permit, throughout the rest of the year. So, you know, we're talking about these firms, I said before, that may be thinking, you know what, we're not going to do anything right now. Let's see how we get on, preserve our cash, get through this period, and then we'll start recruiting. So the fact that some companies are already looking to discuss recruitment, it's coming back on the agenda, is a very encouraging sign. A poll of business leaders by Management Today and Hays, a very large recruitment agency, actually found that 55% would now be more likely to consider hiring an employee who is not within commuting distance to the office. Okay, so we're talking about remote working now. This presents so many opportunities for graduates. Okay, so say you wanted to work for a company in Manchester, you'd have to think about relocating and all the costs associated, and you're taking a risk. Would it work out? Now companies thinking it doesn't matter where you live, because you can actually work remotely all the time, or maybe part-time. So the pandemic has actually increased the level of opportunities geographically for graduates. So no longer do all roads lead to London, you have to find a job there. You can look further afield. If these companies, 55%, are now more likely to consider hiring you if you're beyond an hour or so away. That's really good news. And they're two big organizations, Management Today, that's a business periodical, and Hays, one of the biggest high street agencies. So that's a really important piece of research that came out the start of this week. Now, one other encouraging sign is that between the 18th and the 25th of September, total online job adverts, so on Reed or Monster, those kind of job boards, increased by 4%. Okay, so again, these things aren't massive changes, and it is very general, but it increased from 55% to 59%. And the important thing to notice here that all categories were climbing, and that's just within a week. So things change. So that is also very encouraging. And again, a huge piece of research that came out that looked at all online job boards. So that's a very, very good positive sign for graduates. Now, according to the REC, right, so that stands for the Recruitment Employers Confederation. It's one of the professional bodies that recruitment agencies or employers join up, and they have a certain code of conduct. They have regular meetings and conferences, but they also do some excellent research. And they also go to the government and lobby the government to improve things. So they were very involved with the Kickstart scheme, for instance. So we pay close attention to what they say. And this is interesting too. And again, based on the period June, August, so a couple of months, they found that the employer's intention to hire permanent staff in the next 3 months rose to a net level of +11. Okay, so their projections for the next 3 months are actually encouraging, and that's permanent roles. Okay, these aren't temporary roles or short-term or internships. These are actual full-time graduate jobs amongst all of these roles. So that is another really important piece of research, very encouraging for graduates. And finally, the British Chamber of Commerce. So again, they represent thousands of employers, all shapes and sizes, all over the UK. That did a quarterly survey, and that said 41% of firms said they expected their turnover to increase over the next 12 months? Okay, so these are the sectors that are finding their growth is being accelerated by the situation we're in. So, all companies aren't suffering at the same time in the same way. It's a very fragmented situation. The jobs market is always changing. But that's another very encouraging piece of research. So 41% of firms are expecting their turnover, so the amount of money they make, to increase over the next 12 months. That's quite a long projection. And if they think that over the next 12 months, they are confident. They are confident that they're going to grow, and this will usually mean that they will need to hire people. So this is just some of the information that we get from surveys and research within our industry that I think will help graduates from the University of Bedfordshire make that next step. So have a look yourself, Google some of these research projects that have been taking place recently. A lot of them are free to read. And also your career service will give you access to any reports that they receive as well. So if we drill down into the graduate recruitment industry itself, we have membership of the Institute of Student Employers, okay? So we've been members of this organisation since we started 23 years ago. It's very important for us. Typical members are your big, well-known graduate recruiters. They recruit thousands of graduates every year. So it's very useful for us for networking, finding out what's going on in the industry. So, nothing happens without us knowing about it, basically. This is a very important professional body that we're members of. And again, they do some very useful research, which you may not actually have access to because this is paid for. So they did some research in May, and this showed that 23% of their members, and they have about 300 big employers who fill in this survey, say they'll be recruiting less graduates in 2020. Now that's not actually bad news, okay? There will always be years where graduate recruiters will be recruiting less graduates. We've seen it every single year. The positive thing to take from this is that 77% will be recruiting graduates, okay? 77% will be recruiting graduates in 2020. So that's the majority, okay? So that's actually some really encouraging news, and that was only back in May. Now, the reason some of them aren't recruiting is for the uncertainty. So 39% of employers who said they will be recruiting less said uncertainty. So completely understandable. And some of those employers will be in sectors like retail, hospitality, where they're finding things are going really, really tough for them. And the top priority isn't training graduates right now, okay? So when that certainty improves with what the government's doing, what the Chancellor is doing, what other companies are getting on with, will slowly bring them back to thinking, you know what, we're confident about the future, let's recruit graduates. So for some companies, they have postponed their recruitment, but hopefully as things improve, they will come back to recruiting graduates. Now, I mentioned earlier that some employers have postponed their start date. So just to let you know, 31% of employers actually anticipate delaying their start dates. Again, it's not the majority. So, 69%, 59% have actually said that, they're committing to their start date. So 59% still committing to their start date and taking all their graduates through the process. So, that's not too bad. Now, the reduction in hiring is far worse for small to medium enterprises. I mentioned that before, depending on the sector they're in or their financial health, cash flow is really, really important for a lot of firms who are SMEs. So small to medium enterprises, up to 250 employees, finding it particularly hard. Also, they've identified the following sectors that are finding it hard. So built environment, finance and professional services, energy, engineering, and industry sectors. So again, their report focuses on these particular areas that are struggling. So you might want to make a note of these and think maybe that the opportunities aren't so good in these particular areas. Again, they're very broad. So finance and professional services, that includes thousands of different companies. So this report will only have a small number, albeit very big recruiters. So don't read into certain things too much, because some of these sectors, according to other surveys, are also doing well. But finance and professional services is a massive sector. There's lots of different segments within that. So it might be worth having a further look into that. And if you do need me to share that with you, do let me know. So again, according to this survey, they were actually furloughing 13% of their staff. So not massive numbers, but this does mean that maybe some people in the recruitment department are being furloughed. So that affects the speed of their recruitment process. If they're not up and running at home, for instance, or the breakdown in the communication from people working in the office or people working at home. So, some companies may find that is holding them back from recruiting graduates. But again, it's only a very, very small number that actually furloughed their staff. Now, this has meant that a lot of recruiters haven't gone on campus. So 69% have cancelled visits to universities and 72% have cancelled attendance at career fairs. So, this is usually the time where campus is so busy with career fairs, fresher fairs, interview sessions, skill sessions, that kind of thing. They're tending to be carrying on remotely, but virtual career fairs have also come up, and I'm not sure how many employers are actually going to these at the moment. We're sort of looking at it and deciding whether we are going to go, but we really like to see students face to face and meet a lot of students at university while we're there. So it's not quite the same when it's virtual, but there have been some cases of very successful virtual career fairs, but very often it's when graduates know the kind of company that they want to meet, and then they'll meet them virtually. So it is very, very different to in-person events. And some companies have retreated from that for this season. And as I said before, skill sessions and things like that have been moved virtually. And so was the recruitment process. So 71% of companies have actually moved their interviews online. Now, going for interviews at the best of times is a nerve-wracking experience. So we're starting to advise graduates how to perform at their best in a virtual interview. So there's some subtle differences about how that process works, but not only interviews, you've got assessment centres, you've got onboarding itself, you've got training. All these things are moving online as recruiters are unable to do these things face to face. Also, 92% have moved to home working. So many big firms are doing this beforehand. Other firms maybe are on the fence. 92% have now moved to home working. So they're thinking, we can monitor people, what they're doing from home. It doesn't seem to affect productivity. And many have used this as an experiment. And it seems going forward that many companies will continue with this, or maybe a hybrid version where they have people working from home for a couple of days a week and the rest are coming into the office. So that's a huge shift, which may not have happened because of the pandemic as fast as it has. And as I said earlier, this has presented opportunities because graduates can now find that they're not restricted by where they live. And almost 40% of firms haven't actually finalised their hiring plans for 2020. So, that's a considerable amount. Still not the majority, but 40% of firms are still deciding how many graduates they're going to hire. They are going to hire, they just don't know how many and when. So, that's good news. In none of these reports or surveys have we found graduate recruiters saying we are going to stop hiring graduates. So that's a very important message I want to get out to you, that recruiters are hiring. They may be delaying it, they may be postponing it, but they are committing to recruiting graduates. It's just when. Now, you need to know what you can do right now to take advantage of this situation, because when the jobs market comes back, you'll be up against lots of other graduates going for these jobs. So here's some advice we've been giving graduates over the last few months. And we've also spoken to graduates that we worked with in the last recession in 2009. And we've actually put their advice on our website. We have a blog. So we've got comments from hundreds of different graduates sharing their advice, their guidance, their tips about how they found jobs in the last recession. So definitely go to our blog and you'll find way more information there about positive steps you can take. So I'm going to give you a summary here of some of the things we're advising graduates right now. So I mentioned it before about not losing sight of your career goals. Remember why you took this degree. Remember of the career objectives you set out to achieve. And think carefully about the sectors that you apply for. Of course, different sectors will offer different opportunities, and it may take you 1 or 2 jobs now to get to where you want. So it may take longer, but don't lose sight of your career goals. That's very, very important. I've talked a lot about sectors that are doing well, sectors that aren't. So just to reiterate, avoid sectors that are hugely affected by the downturn. So aviation, tourism, leisure, hospitality, we all know they're suffering hugely. But focus on sectors that are seeing a surge. So we talked about online retail, Amazon, and all the companies that serve companies like Amazon. Any in-home service, food delivery, you name it. Think about the services you use, because they're certainly are booming as people have to lock down in certain areas, or they can't get out because of social distancing or they're shielding, things like that. Healthcare, goes without saying, is growing right now. Certain technical areas like fintech or cybersecurity. Okay, so take cybersecurity. People using the internet far more now, different generations. And you're going to see potentially people getting not hacked, but maybe they'll get their data stolen. There are certain concerns over security. So big firms are starting to invest in cybersecurity because one of the fears they have is, like an online 9/11. That there may be something coming along like that. So companies are investing more and more into that to make sure their websites are secure as possible, so there's no data leakage and people feel confident sharing their data. So that's a huge sector you might want to consider. Analytics. Now, this isn't strictly a sector, but it's where companies have teams that kind of go through a lot of data. So data science is another term that they use. So they're forecasting, they're looking at trends, particularly large firms involved in retail. They look at their sales figures, how the weather affects buying behavior, all sorts of clever things. So analytics is a huge area. And I mentioned IT and technical consultancy before. They're still recruiting graduates. Their growth has been accelerated by this situation. So have a look at these sectors. Now, if you look at what's going on in, say, Wuhan, where it all started, you're actually starting to see sectors that suffered because they were first in are starting to get back to normal. So things like tourism or aviation or leisure or hospitality right now for us is suffering. But if we look at what's happening in Wuhan, they're actually finding things are getting back to normal. Okay, so there is light at the end of the tunnel, and we should certainly pay attention to what's going on in countries like China, because they were first in and will be first out of this situation. Now, in the meantime, it's still very important to build your CV. You need to look at what your degree has given you in terms of skills. You need to look at what you've gained along the way, work experience, volunteering, internships, and the way you present yourself on your CV is so important. And we run workshops on CVs all the time. because essentially it's a sales document, and standing out is very, very hard with recruiters right now receiving way more applications than normal. So just go back to the start and build your CV. Look at the skills that you have that are marketable. What makes you employable, okay? And there's plenty of reports about what employers look for. The top 3 skills tend to be resilience, communication skills, commercial awareness, things like this. But certainly look at the jobs you're applying for, because the skills will change. But make sure you're reflecting those skills in your CV. So pay close attention to getting the best possible CV you can right now. And use your time productively. So, take small steps. It can be easy to get into a negative mindset if you're reading the news all the time. But I've already shown you, depending on where you look, there are positive signs. So take small steps, gather momentum, put yourself in a strong position. Things you can do, like practicing virtual interviews. So that's as easy as doing this with a friend or a parent, or maybe someone at university. Set yourself up on Zoom perhaps, and actually do a mock virtual interview, because when it comes to the real thing, you'll feel far more confident, and that will show to the interviewer. So use this time productively, and practice things like virtual interviews and building your CV, for instance. Now, getting noticed and standing out is really important in this market right now. I mentioned there's 500,000 graduates about to enter the jobs market, lots of people being made redundant. So companies are getting lots and lots of responses right now, more than they would normally. So it's very important that you use lots of different routes to the market. So use recruitment agencies. We're a specialist recruitment agency just for graduates. We work across all sectors practically. So look at specialist recruitment agencies. Look at high street agencies if you want, because if you temp maybe for 3 months, that could give you a foot in the door. So don't neglect temporary recruitment agencies on your high street. LinkedIn, lots of recruiters advertise jobs on LinkedIn. Get your profile on there. Start looking at recruiters, follow companies, and soon enough you'll start hearing about opportunities. Job boards, there are many job boards out there. So search for ones that are graduate specific. Get their job alerts. I'm sure you're all using those at the moment. And also your career service, brilliant resource. And even if you've left university, you can still use the career service. People are there to help you. They've helped graduates through recessions and downturns before, so definitely use your career service. One way of getting noticed, and I've seen this happen before, is sending speculative letters with your CV to companies. So by this, I mean, first of all, research maybe 6 companies you'd like to work for, okay? Have a look at their website. Now, even if they haven't advertised any jobs, don't be put off, because so many companies won't put jobs on their website. They'll advertise it internally. They'll ask their staff to refer other people, so it may not actually see the light of day. So stick with these 6 companies, find out who the recruitment manager, recruitment director, the HR business partner, they go under lots of different job titles. Find them on LinkedIn, figure out their email. It's quite easy to do that. Just go on the website and you'll find out what their email is. Send them a letter with your CV, but not just any old CV. Make sure you're describing your skills that really would help maybe with a certain project they've just won. Or maybe you can bring certain skills from another company similar to them that they could really benefit from. And we've seen this happen a lot. Companies will interview you. They're interested. They want to know what you could bring to their organization. And in some cases, they'll think, you know what, we were thinking about setting this job up. You sent your CV with a letter just at the right time. We'd like to take you on. Straight away, you're reducing the competition. But it does require you to put in some homework, okay? You do need to think quite creatively to stand out, but it has worked many times for graduates that we've advised over the years who are very, very keen to work for certain sectors, and maybe they give up because they think there's no jobs there. It's not always the case. Number 6. Now, in an interview, the chances are the interviewer is going to ask you, what did you do in the lockdown? Okay, so have a good answer prepared. So we talked about using your time productively. So, chances are you will have done some online learning perhaps over the summer. I know that Open University or Harvard University do free online courses, so you might want to mention that. You might have volunteered in your spare time. You might have even been working on a contract or a part-time basis, but have a really good answer that shows that you've been keeping the momentum moving forward and shown your resilience. You've kept going. Okay, that's a really strong indication to an employer that you are resilient, especially right now when they know it's been very, very hard for graduates. So have a good answer prepared for that question. And also, you don't have to enter the job market right now. I mean, in the last recession, quite a few graduates thought, you know what, I'm just going to stay at university and do a master's degree for another year. And if you can afford it and you choose the right master's degree, that could put you in a stronger position in a year's time. So there may be opportunities at the University of Bedfordshire to do postgraduate study. Certainly consider that. You could actually start your own business. We all hear about companies that started during recessions. So if you had a side hustle while at university, maybe now is the time to put some more time and effort into that. And also, you don't have to stay in this country. Maybe you want to go abroad and try in other countries which are starting to see things pick up or are not as badly affected as this country at the moment. So you do have other options. So you don't have to enter the job market straight away. And finally, this happened in the last recession in 2009. Big recruiters very often have a shortfall. Okay, so by that I mean they have a graduate scheme. They offered 40 graduates the role. They're all supposed to start second week in September. A day before, 10 graduates say, I've taken another job offer, I won't be joining the scheme. Now, lots of companies don't have a backup plan. They don't have another list of graduates they can go back to, for instance, because they know graduates will take other job offers, and sometimes they have a shortfall, okay, and they really struggle, and they come to Graduate Recruitment Bureau because they need to fill those roles very, very quickly. So if you think you've missed the boat, go back to these firms and see on their website if they have a shortfall. They may repost those jobs. Not many graduates think to do that. So I think that's a kind of something that doesn't get reported very much, but big graduate recruiters will often have a shortfall. So certainly have a look into that. Finally, before I take any questions, we've just launched another way to help university graduates right now. It's called graduatementor.uk. This is part of our campaign we launched 6 weeks ago called #HelpTheCovid-Generation. So we're stepping up to try and help more graduates across the country make that first step in the world of work, which is hard enough under normal circumstances. So we've actually been able to recruit 90 mentors. So these are leading business people from all walks of life. They are people from university careers services, some of the professional coaches and mentors, or they're industry experts, that kind of thing. So I've actually got 90 mentors on the platform right now, and they're offering one-to-one career mentoring for free for 1 hour. And this is all being done via Zoom or Google Meet or MS Teams. So it's all being done remotely, and they're on the platform right now. So that's another way for you to have a chat with a professional person, brainstorm your ideas, find out about ways to improve your CV. It could be anything. So a free platform called graduatementor.uk is available right now for University of Bedfordshire graduates. Okay, I've whizzed through that. hopefully that's given you some reassurance, some encouragement that although things are challenging, there are opportunities out there for graduates. There are things you can do to move forward and get the job that we think you deserve after 3 years of studying for your degree. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer those right now.
Thanks, Dan. Well, what we're going to do is we have been writing questions at within the chat. And this is your time. You don't have to write it in the chat. If you prefer to speak to Dan directly, please unmute yourself and you can ask the question. I think James pointed something out, a really good question. And there was somebody where I pointed out the question where you addressed it already, Dan, that say if you are from the travel industry, what would you recommend? Because I think you've said it already, but there are transferable skills what you learn in your degree, so don't get too disheartened. So that's one of them. I don't know whether you wanted to say anything more, Dan, on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously it's going to be disappointing if you've done that kind of degree for a sector that is really struggling right now. By all means, go for it. You know, there still may be opportunities. I'm not saying totally ignore it. And I said before, do not lose sight of your career goals, but also think laterally, you know, look at your transferable skills. There may be opportunities in other sectors that you might not have considered before. So, you know, for instance, when a graduate registers with GRB, our system will match their skill set with clients from lots of different areas. So we actually kind of help graduates get a feel for the jobs market by introducing jobs to them that are based on their skill set. And often, you know, I use the example of, you know, say a teacher. They'll find that there are lots of other opportunities that they can go into because of their transferable skill set. I mean, they've got so many skills. Just like every other graduate, there are other opportunities you can go for, apart from the obvious degree-related one. I mean, of course, we'd all like to use our degree in our careers, of course, but it may take you 1 or 2 jobs right now to get to that position. So look at where you could use your transferable skills, maybe in a completely different industry, and you can actually bring something different back to that sector that you want to work for. So there are, you know, there are different ways to come at this.
Thanks, Dan. I think there was the same question from somebody who said something about the health sector, but I thought the health sector is kind of booming, isn't it? Yeah. Not like in terms of science, and so I thought I'd just address that. I think it was one of the students who said that. Dan, I don't know whether you wanted to say anything more. It's like, yes, Alina said something about health and social care graduate.
Yeah, I mean, that is a sector that's doing pretty well. I don't know what your experience is at the career service. Are you noticing those employers in that sector?
I think what I've seen is when I am browsing through vacancies, and I know James does this as well because he's one of the recruiters in my team, we do see a lot of jobs in the NHS. And so when you go on like even just a general job site, you're going to see lots of job in the NHS. So remember, health and social care graduates, there will be loads of like admin support. There might not be like other specific jobs, but there is a lot of jobs in the NHS sector. I don't know what James does this quite a lot, so I'm going to push it back to him.
Yeah, sure. Hi guys, James McGrath speaking. Yeah, so I have seen quite a big uptake in roles with the NHS, definitely. A lot of part-time roles as well, which would be very suitable for a lot of the graduates and people who are currently studying. Because, you know, as Dan's mentioned there, it's very important to keep an eye on your career goals, but at the same time, you still want to be upskilling it, you know, whether that be voluntary work, part-time work, or some type of work in the meantime, so that you've got transferable skills when you do go into the career you want as well. Something Dan gave a really good tip about networking earlier on that I was hoping we could push on a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned, Dan, about Amazon performing well at the moment.
Yeah.
And then you went on to say about how you could then find out who their supplier was to then uncover more vacancies. I think
Yes.
that's a really good tip, which doesn't get it just doesn't get used enough by students and people who are experienced as well. But I was just thinking, just to explain it a little more, how would you network that, Dan, to then
Yeah.
find them further vacancies which might not be apparent straight away?
Yeah, it's a great point, James, because each industry sector has its own like ecosystem.
Yeah.
So you've got companies at the top, companies you will have heard of, but then there's satellite firms that supply these companies. So, for instance, I was reading about a company that provide outdoor heaters. Okay, so you think patio heaters, that's for like people's homes, right? But no, pubs and restaurants are buying loads of outdoor heaters because they've got people who need to eat out on the street and outside of the actual restaurant itself. So they're a supplier that are doing well off the back of pubs and restaurants needing to have people outside. Okay, so you've just got to either look at the news headlines and make the connection, join the dots, so to speak, but also have a look at companies within certain sectors and think all the moving parts within that organization to make it work. So I talked about Amazon and obviously the logistics part. So all the logistics firms that need to deliver all of the parcels for Amazon all over the UK, all over the globe, okay? So then you think, okay, if they're getting shipped all over the UK, there's companies who are providing the vans, there's companies who provide the drivers, there's companies who provide the packaging, there's companies who design the packaging, there's companies who make the tape. If you really break down how a company works, chances are there'll be jobs and companies created around these sectors. So it's worth sort of kind of just doing like a cloud diagram. Put Amazon in the middle and think, right, online retail, e-commerce. Who would supply that? Who would be the typical suppliers, and then suppliers to those suppliers, and expand it like that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that I really like that. So it's almost like mapping out the company to a
Yes.
certain extent to then, find out what other businesses work with them. You can do things as simple as going on the company website, LinkedIn as well, to find them companies and to find who they're affiliated with. I think that's a really good one when
Yeah.
finding maybe the more less obvious roles.
I think
Less obvious
also,
roles. And I also want to add, there's lots of business parks. So go on Google Earth, Google Maps rather, and see where a business park is. Look at the entrance, and you'll see on the sign lots of companies, and I guarantee these will be companies that are probably doing really well that you just won't have heard of. That's an often overlooked technique for finding new employers.
Dan, I've got two more. I know it's 4 o'clock. I am going to address the two questions from Azib and Anastasia, who's been waiting there. I just wanted to add a point that I have, in terms of what Dan has said about the logistics firm. I am also going to back that point. I've got a family member who I thought, I said to her, are you going to be affected by redundancy? And she was like, no, I am so busy, it is unbelievable. And she is a logistics, she works in logistics, and how we were talking about working practices, you will also see they did a global survey. So that this is a global logistics firm. I can't say the name, but I can say to you that they did a global survey, and the majority of them said that only 1% of them actually said that they want to go into the office to work. So this person is now going to be permanently based at home, and it's a logistics firm, and she's doing finance there. Right. So this is like hot off the press for you.
Brilliant.
Okay, so Azib, you have a question. Do you want to say something? Don't be shy. Everything
You
that
might
you
have
say
to just
is.
unmute yourself first, Azib.
Has he got a question? Azib? Okay, if you want to come back, Azib, I'm going to go up to Anastasia. No, is it? Oh, can you hear me? No, we can't. We can't hear you, Azib. Are you on mute? Oh,
He's
Mr. House.
unmuted me.
Okay. My name is Azib and I'm a third year international student doing my BSc in computing and data science at the University of Bedfordshire. You've talked about the prospects of graduate jobs in different sectors, but could you kindly shed more light on the chances of international students with graduate jobs or even internships, considering UK has introduced the new UK post-study visa to be introduced for international students who are graduating from summer 2021. Dan, do you know any more and what would you say?
I mean, I say the opportunities are exactly the same, but for certain companies, say in the defence sector, you know, the security clearance can be an issue for international students, but that's just one sector. But I'd suggest, obviously, the UK Border Agency will have details to answer your question, but also there is a website called Student Circus, and they list jobs specifically in the UK for international students. So companies who are prepared to sponsor international students. It's called, yeah, Student Circus. That's it, yeah. So have a look at that.
Also have a look at the UK Borders website as well, because there's a list of sponsors there.
Yeah.
As well. I've got, who am I going to next is Anastasia, do you have your question? For advice for student graduating in the summer, business management. I think it's a general question, Dan, but I think you've covered it. What tips, I guess? Anastasia, did you want to say anything more?
2021. Okay.
Yes, I think, yes.
Yeah. I would say, you know, look at the companies that you want to apply to, and they will list their process, you know, when they're taking applications. So it'll probably be very, very soon. If they're a big company, they have they open their recruitment process in the autumn. Then they do their interviews and assessment days in the new year and Easter. Get job offers out shortly after that to start in the summer. So they're the big companies that will probably advertise with your career service and lots of other job boards. If you're going for maybe a smaller firm that doesn't have a scheme, let's say, you need to just keep an eye on their website. Try and contact the recruitment person and see when they hired last time to get an idea of their recruitment process. You know, some companies do it very last minute, depending on a project. So you just need to follow these companies, maybe on LinkedIn, connect with their recruitment team, and you know, speak to a career service and things like that, and just get as much information as possible so you can apply for those roles.
I don't know, Dan, can you still take another couple of questions? Are you okay
sure.
for time, or?
Yeah, well, one more.
What we've got, sorry, I think I've got somebody about psychology and psychology. Was it psychology? There was somebody with criminology and psychology. And Suresh, your question about tourism and hospitality, I know you've come in late. Dan has recorded this session and your answers to your question will be there. But if you want to come back to us in the career service, then by all means. But as Dan said before, but in China, obviously that's where it started. That sector has started to recover, so that same thing will happen in the UK. And you don't just stick to the tourism and hospitality. You've got transferable skills, so you can basically apply for other jobs as well. I'm really sorry, I've got to cut you off, but that it has been all recorded. Yeah.
Yes, it has. Yeah, all recorded. I'll add this to the GRB YouTube channel. I'll send you a link, Priya.
That's great. And I've got psychology and criminology behavior. Is it Ilona, are you saying what's the career prospects like in there? I would reckon, I don't know, Dan, just predicting it would be quite high due to people being inside, due to recession. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what the crime figures look like, if they're going up or down or they're flatlined. But, you know, very useful degree, absolutely. And even if you can't enter that sector, as I say, the transferable skills from that degree could be very, very useful for lots of other jobs. So, yeah, it's quite hard to answer that one.
Yeah, on the plus side, I would say psychology is probably one of the most transferable degrees you can have. So you're in a strong position with a psychology degree anyway, applying for roles.
Yeah. Definitely psychology. A lot of our students, I have found that they will go into customer service management roles. There's HR. There's also lots of roles as well. Jabeen, we can't take a quick. I'm going to quickly answer this question. I don't know whether Dan wants to as well. Career prospects for a web developer, all I've heard from the small businesses sector is that everything is going online due to COVID, and a lot of SMEs have started to pick this up and they're all requesting for web developers. So I don't think you've got anything to worry about. I have spoken to Tata and Emphasis, and they will be picking up their recruitment as well. So it's just a bit of a delay, but I don't think that industry is affected as much. I don't know what Dan wants to say, a couple of words on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've talked about the tech sector. That's a really marketable skill right now. I mean, for all companies, shapes and sizes, like you say, because things have forced companies that weren't online before to go online now, to reach people at home. You know, there should be plenty of opportunities. Certainly on our website, we've got employers looking for developers, software engineers, technical consultants. It's a massive sector, massive.
So guys, that would like to thank Dan. I'm also going to say that Dan has graduate bureau, his own business, and basically if you want to register with him, please do so. They have lots of vacancies as well, and they're specialists in finding graduates role. Okay, you've also got the career service. That's myself and just the part of the team, me and James. You can come to us, you can look online, we can help you with mock interviews, your CVs, interview techniques, anything to do with your career that you are worried about, and you can use us for 3 years after you graduate. We have more from Dan's team. So anybody, the lady who's interested in psychology, have you thought about a career in recruitment or in HR? We have got Dan's colleague who's actually going to be delivering a seminar in the next couple of weeks, and she's going to be talking about a day in the life of a recruiter. Okay, so yes, so I don't know, anything else to add, Dan or James, before we end?
No, not from myself. Just thank you to Dan for today's webinar.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for inviting me, and for everyone tuning in. Hopefully that will have helped. And yeah, visit our site, visit your career service, do as much as you can, and you'll find a way through.
Great
Thanks
stuff. Thank
so
you, Dan.
much, Dan.
All right, you're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.